The Book of Remembrance of Enoch, Chapter 14. An account of Enoch and Edney receiving instruction for dividing the earth and establishing the independence of truth in a decisive battle in the first great war in heaven. And it came to pass that when the Lord ended his instructions to Enoch and the listeners regarding the division of days, the listeners were filled with the presence of the Holy Spirit, and they were struck with wonder and gratitude at the blessings that were bestowed upon the righteous people of Maween. And they all were filled with questions, and they spoke with Motsah the Lamb for the rest of that day, concerning the manner in which their people could use their holy days to comfort Anokeesed. And they were very intent in their conversations, for they spoke together as ones who knew of the importance of the task which lay before them. And they saw the division of days to be the means whereby the people of the holy city could be rich companions to Anokeesed. And by their new reckoning of days, they could walk with him in the way to continuously comfort him according to the tenderness of his heart. And it came to pass that in the midst of these discussions, Motsah slipped quietly away unnoticed, and Enoch and the listeners continued to confer together into the night, and they remained where they were for some days, pondering the richness of the treasure of the division of days, and by the power and urgency of the Spirit that was in them, they could discern the value of the holy days to both their people and to Anokeesed. And I saw that these listeners who walk with the Lord almost daily were present at the birth of Adahiel in the lives of men and in the midst of creation. For before this day there were no concept of measuring the passing of time, neither was there any idea of counting numbers, nor was there any thought nor any practice of a people sharing specific days of the year in common, and the prospect of sharing together the memorable days of Anokeesed in order to comfort him was exciting to them, and the anticipation of it filled their souls with joy. And one among them was a listener who was called Achoni, and she reported that it had been prophesied at her birth, that it was part of her vision to influence, to see that the Lord had companions. And this woman went out alone after the discussions to praise Motsah for his kindness, in revealing the division of days to them. And when these things became known, the people began to teach one another and their children how to count, and they began to measure the weeks of the seasons. And it came to pass that as I looked with Urim, I saw a curious thing among the righteous, for they were not inclined to hide the knowledge of these things from the wicked. And further, they supposed that all of that which was the foundation of the days of holiness came from the first great sevening among the righteous, which was a matter wholly ignored by the wicked. And they also knew that all of the holiness of their memorable days arose out of the day of the measure of Milo. Within the lives of the righteous first began to be given to Motsah the Lamb, and the wicked have no inclination whatsoever to submit themselves either a little or without reserve to their vengeful God, but rather they would only act in his name after measuring out for themselves honor and rich rewards and an acceptable standing before their fellows. And they would only speak openly of their God and think to be seen to act together with him if it brought them something desirable. And I also saw that this day of instruction concerning the division of days occurred 26 days before the day of the celebration of Icar, which was to be their first holy day to celebrate, upon establishing the divisions of days among their people. And the listeners returned home and began to immediately instruct all of the people in these matters, after staying 4 days in the place of instruction. And it was in this way that the people of the Lord spent 22 days in preparation to begin to undertake the celebration of their very first holy day together. However, they were not aware of these numbers. And it came to pass that after all was ready, they called all of the people together and instructed them, and they departed to their various settlements to observe the day, the celebration of Icar. And after these things, the people of Maween all conferred together, and they determined together with one mind how they would begin to set in place and observe to keep fully the divisions of days. And in all of these things, the son of Adah was the chief spokesman for the listeners. And I saw that when the multitude was assembled and receiving instruction, the son of Ada, who was called Cain, began to recite to them that all of the holy days of the division of days began with the holiness of the day of the measure of Milu. And he said that all of the power of the rest of the holy days of the year that are to be shared with Anokeesed began with the example of Milu in the giving of her life to Motsah. And in the midst of those who were assembled, Milu was listening, and she fell to the earth, being overcome with joy, that she could be the means of blessing her lovely one. And also the people of Maween and Amazyaddad carried her home, and all of her children called her blessed. And they ministered to her until she regained her strength. And this woman, who was the mother of many children, walked with Motsah the lamb. And the two of them rejoiced together, and I saw that the people of Maween henceforth considered her to be the elder mother of the division of days. And it was known by them that her spirit would someday dwell in the soul of Adahiel, and the two of them would inhabit the light of Anokeesed together. And it came to pass that after these events, the people prepared diligently for their first holy day, by making vessels for the Lord to eat upon when he ate with them. And the first holy day to be celebrated by the righteous of the earth thus began with the joyous anticipation of the people being a comfort to their dearly beloved Anokeesed, when he worried that his children came under the distress of want. And all of the people rejoiced, and they called it the celebration of Ikar. And it was essential that the righteous have great determination to see that all was done in order and with clarity. And it came to pass that because of these things, a very great thing began to transpire in the land of Maween. For every man, woman, and child found that they could know and feel both the joys and burdens of Anokeesed, who is their Father in heaven, and they could participate in acts of companionship to comfort him. And it came to be seen that because of these things, all of the people of Maween, starting at an early age, began to grow to be very close to Anokeesed, and much tenderness of heart towards him was known in all of their lives. And Anokeesed knew that he was fully loved by them, and that it is not all, for the nature of his personality was before them in all of their daily walk, and the power of it influenced their behavior toward one another, and loving kindness abounded. Now understand that the righteous people of the city of Maween thought of the nature of Anokeesed, who created all things, to be exactly the same as one would think of a little child, and they considered him to be wholly innocent and absent of any rancor, and they knew that he had no ill will, even for the very wicked. And they saw Anokeesed to be holy and pure of heart, and utterly without the capacity to bring harm, and the righteous loved him with all of the gentle instincts that are given to mankind, which causes them to be drawn in their souls to love the helpless baby things of the earth. And compassion toward Anokeesed abounded, and to them Anokeesed was the ultimate being of purity, and the infinite wellspring of tender loving kindness. And they sorrowed at any thought of his disappointment or despair, and there could never be a people who could know greater joy in the comfort and well-being of their Father. And it came to pass that it was in this way, and by these means, that the righteous of the earth were brought to be joined with the forces that brought into being all of creation. And Maween prospered and flourished, and the souls of the righteous were enlarged. And the wicked of Senasiol were perplexed at the strength of the righteous, and the earth was known to tremble with joy and gladness in her delight, to be whole in her soul once again. And the rocks in Eden were comforted as they beheld the children of men joining together with the holy host of heaven to be strengthened in their salvation. And thus the division of days was a comfort to all of the host of Ebedel, and all of the division of days came to be established before those who were born near the time of the day of instruction were grown to be married. And it came to pass in the course of time, the wicked learned of the division of days that was observed among the righteous, and they heard tales of the substance of it, because the righteous could not anticipate evil. And while many among the wicked mocked, The men of the secret society of Seku listened with high interest, and they made their plans according to the evil whisperings of the spirit of Motsah to them. And the prophecy given to Enoch that the wicked would not abide by the holiness of the division of days began to manifest itself, and the far-reaching effects of the wicked in this matter will yet come to be revealed. And it came to pass that Enoch and Edney, after having the great satisfaction of being a part of these joys, took their journey eastward with the intent to go to rest a while in the borders of the land of the country of the people of Milo. And as they traveled together, they approached to ascend up into the high country, and the mountains of the east lay before them in the misty heights, and the broad plains of the land of Enoch were to be seen to their west. And they were able to go together in their old age, because their duties toward their children were ended, and they went hand in hand, and their joy and their rich companionship was full. And the serenity of the presence of the Holy Spirit went with them, and as they looked to begin their ascent, they were on a high plain, before great cliffs of rock to their east. And they turned themselves to cast their eyes over all of the regions of Maween that surrounded the Aral Sea. And they could see the light of the setting sun dancing upon the waters of the sea. And they thought upon their joys in the establishment of Maween, and upon the greatness of all of that which the Lord had accomplished for the righteous. And as they pondered their happiness in these things, the stillness was broken by a cry, and the sound of it seemed to come from everywhere, and it pierced them to the very center. And they looked about to see from whence it came, and the sound of the cry resounded off the high rocks of the east. And they both were filled with alarm, and they listened intently, and they both prayed and asked the Lord to help them to understand the words and the meaning of the cry. And when it came again, they both knew it was the earth who cried, and she said, my soul, my soul. And they both heard and understood the words. And Enoch and Edney wept together, and they bowed themselves to the earth, and they put their hands upon it to bring it comfort. And while they were on their knees, they cried out to the Lord for help to understand the meaning of the continuing cries of the earth. And it came to pass that as they did so, a figure from the south could be seen to be approaching, and it was Motsah the Lamb. And he walked as though he was burdened. And Enoch and Edney spoke to one another to wonder if he could hear the cries of the earth. And as the Lord approached, they sat quietly and waited to see what he would do. And the Lord approached, and he sat down before them, and he greeted them in kindness. And he spoke, and he said, the earth cries, for she despairs at the prospect of that which may befall her lovely ones. For there is a great calamity waiting to come to the creations of my Father. And the wicked are now approaching to discover all that is needed for them to establish themselves in such a way as to destroy all of the intentions of my Father in creation. And Motsah the decadent is instructing them day by day, so that they may establish their own decrees of creation, and thereby separate themselves from being dependent upon righteousness in the midst of creation. And they intend to utilize the element of wickedness among themselves to establish their lies, to have precedence over the truth of my Father. And upon hearing these things, Edney took the hand of Motsah in both her hands, and she said, Lord, what must we do? And the Lord gained strength from her, and he said, the two of you must see to it that the righteous become prepared and informed, so that they can perform a task for me. And Enoch replied, say on, Lord. And the Lord lifted his head as if he had found renewed determination. And he began to speak, and he said, I shall instruct you 4 times as you walk in the way, in order to prepare you for a task. And before 4 years pass, you must abide in your strength to accomplish the matter. So I will give you your first instruction at this time. You have not known it, my children, but a fierce battle is transpiring on earth and in heaven, and it shall be known by your posterity as the first great war in heaven. And there are huge forces of righteousness assembled and at the ready to aid in the cause of Anokeesed. And there are strong and determined forces of wickedness also at the ready to subdue all that is holy and all of the inhabitants of the earth, and even all of the living souls in creation, are to be affected by that which may come of this war. Now understand that at this time, both the righteous and the wicked are set on a course to be able to establish firmly who is the object of creation, and it shall be either mankind or the Darkar Choi. And we have arrived at this place because the nature of my Father is such that his gift of agency rests to be immovable in all the far reaches of his abode. And at this time, the wicked are dependent upon righteousness, and their lives are dependent upon the truth. And wickedness can neither originate nor create anything, and the forces of evil in Sanasio are loath to depend upon goodness in order for them to participate in the decrees of creation. And their intention is to divide the earth in order to establish themselves to be independent of the truth in creation, so that they may be able to create souls according to their desires. And had they been able in the past to join together in this matter, they would be approaching to accomplish it even now. But there is one, reference number 190, Kohath, the founder of the Society of Seku, see chapter 11, who has arisen among them, who has the skill to band them together, and his intention is to divide the earth in such a way as to cause evil to stand to be independent, to act for itself in the midst of creation. And the cries of the earth that you have heard is the earth in her mourning, because this day he has set his hand to begin to prepare the wicked to accomplish all of these things. But be comforted, my lovely ones, for the righteous have also been prepared, and now stand ready to commence their great acts of righteousness, to come to the aid of my Father. And I will tell you of the preparation on both sides of the war that is taking place. Up until now, I have asked you to make 4 divisions in the midst of creation, and those divisions have drawn the righteous and holy souls in creation to a place where they can affirm the great decrees of creation. But by these same divisions and the direction they have been taken by the wicked, they too stand prepared by them to enlarge their rebellion, to bring it to a fulfillment. First, all of the sons of heaven were divided and given a name. Those who are holy, who are called the Erko use their names to glorify and serve my Father in all of his purposes in creation. And the evil ones, who are called the Darkar Choi, use their names to perform every evil pursuit of wickedness and rebellion. And the both of them are well satisfied with their names and with the station which they have chosen in this division. Secondly, when the waters were divided to be either bitter or sweet, both the righteous and the wicked accepted the task that this division gave to them. Accordingly, the righteous sons of heaven moved out and flowed down like living water toward establishing the city of holiness, to bless and uplift and tenderly strengthen all of the children of the righteous in their instincts to love my Father. But the wicked fallen ones moved out and spilled their filthiness over in their determination to fight against the conscience of man, to know right from wrong and good from evil. And their intent is to seduce all the children of men so that they may rule over them. And thirdly, when the sons of men were divided according to the sanctity of marriage, those who are holy take great delight to identify and lay hold of the loved ones of Anokeesed, and they set themselves to love them and tenderly support them in their love for one another, and to stand firm in their virtue of the sanctity of marriage. But those who are in the shadow of darkness took delight in fornication and in the bondage of lust, and they gladly set out to see to it that the sons of men were seduced into ways of corruption and decadence. And lastly, know that the division of days has been established. The righteous will use their holy days to comfort my Father and to magnify faith in the earth and to enlarge their association with the pathway back to Eden. But the wicked will use their days and how they have divided them to find opportunity to expand deceit and they intend to cause their evil to grow to dominate the world. And they will see to it that their division of days will result in their being able to find dominance over their fellows. And for the first time the earth will know the poor, and the poor of the earth shall mourn in their bondage. And the Lord said, And I would instruct you further, my children, to also know that along with the effect of these 4 divisions, which you have accomplished at my word, the first great 70 was completed with the return to Eden by your first parents. It was completed among both the righteous and the wicked on that day. And because of this, the wicked have also come to their fullness in establishing their own division of days and their religion, and they have clarified their intentions fully for a way of life drawing upon the type of 70 that has transpired in their midst. For they celebrate the covenant of Cain made with Semihazah, and the invention of knives by Lamech, and the establishment of the secret society of Seku by Kohath. And they celebrated the beginning of tribute and slavery, which marked the beginning of nations. And they celebrate the birthday of the Nephilim, delivered by Zillah. And they marked a day to show the satisfaction of possessions, with much pride and boisterousness. And they had their day of the new year, coinciding with the phases of the moon. And because of all of these things, the wicked have come now to be in a position to challenge the 2 great decrees of creation that were declared in Eden by the intervention of their agency. And the loving kindness of my Father is so great that he will not assert himself to forbid his children from denying him and his purpose in creation. And should the one who has arisen succeed, the decrees of creation that come from Motsah the decadent may be set in place upon the earth. But be calm in your souls, because the righteous also have been wisely prepared to affirm the decrees of creation of my Father, and to establish them to be immovable until the end of days, at which time they must be reestablished in the face of wickedness that shall arise in that day. And I say to you now, that the best way for the righteous to establish this affirmation of the decrees of creation is to divide the earth. And the Lord ended his speaking for a moment. And it came to pass that Enoch and Edney pondered these things, and after a moment Enoch said, Please, O Lord, teach me now how you intend for us to divide the earth. And the Lord said, Remember well all of that which I will tell you. And the 3 of them drew close together in their speaking, as they sat upon the ground, as if to guard against being heard. And the Lord said, You are to partition the dwelling places of all the sons of heaven in creation, and all of the watchers of holiness, who are called the Yaatsekawad, are to be stationed in a high standing upon the heights, and in the midst of the light of Anokeesed. And they are to be assigned to all of the pleasant and lovely places upon the hills to dwell, and their abode shall be upon all of the lofty places in the light upon the earth. And their glory is to be made manifest on the surface of all of the beautiful valleys of my abode, and they are to spread themselves out upon the plain, and they are to be a mantle of loveliness, to cover both the land and the sky with their grace. And all of the watchers who have fallen into filthiness, who are called the Darkard are to be given a place of low degree in the darkness of the depths of the earth, and they are to be assigned to all of the lonely and barren and forsaken places of the earth, because they are despicable before my eyes, and they are to be locked up like a prison house in every place, where their voices cannot be heard by the lovely ones of my Father. And you are to assign all of the Yaatsekawad their proper tasks to speak to the objects of creation for Anokeesed, and they will speak great and wondrous things for him, and for his son, and for the righteous, and you shall instruct them in the manner of that which they will say, to all those who grope to find their way, and they shall speak words of tender guidance, and instruct to all the tender-hearted who mourn. And you shall remind the Yaatsekawad to keep themselves in the way of understanding, and in the way of the truth that has been established by your first parents, and by all of the righteous during the first great 70. And you are to divide the earth into 4 quarters, and you are to firmly establish and put in place the 4 directions, based upon the manner of language the Urkodashoi are to speak, and also in support of their behavior as they emulate the loving kindness of my Father. And you are to assign certain among the Urkodashoi to be obedient to the men of service. And there shall be some among the watchers of holiness, who shall be designated by them to speak their words from their directions that bring the power and the presence of Anokeesed to his children. And it must be done in such a way that their instruction will be clear, so that nothing can stay them in their speaking. And you are to establish the conditions whereby their voices can be heralded into the souls of men, and that which they shall speak will be for the edification and deliverance of the souls of the righteous. And that which they shall speak will preserve and protect the righteous in every circumstance, according to the diligence with which these instructions are acted upon. And you are to ascribe to each of the 4 directions rich meaning that speaks of the Son of my Father, and because of the man, their message will contain a fullness of the majesty of the presence of the one who is called Anokeesed. And there shall be no instruction for the Darkardar, nor will there be any assigned task given them, either to act or to speak. And there shall be no manner of friendly interaction allotted to them by the righteous forever. And in all of these things the names of the Urkodashoi shall be beautiful and glorious, and the names of the Darkardar shall be putrid and shameful and ugly. And all of the names of the Urkodashoi shall signify to the righteous the grandeur and delightfulness of the nature of the personality of Anokeesed. But the names of the Darkardar will only reflect the vanity and shame and violent disregard for goodness with which they have clothed themselves, for they have surrounded themselves with filthiness before their God El. And it will come to pass that because of all of these things, which are a part of the division of the earth, the springs out of the view of creation found in the souls of your first parents, authority and finality will issue forth, out of the decrees of creation which will be honored by my Father, to establish the truth of their view of creation in Eden. And that truth will be independent, for it needs no other impetus to act, other than it exists in harmony with the desires of Anokeesed. And remember, it came into being before evil entered to come into the world. And it is in this way that the truth will become a living soul, to be independent and to act for itself in the midst of creation. And this truth will shine forth from the face of my Father, and it cannot be easily subdued. And the light of that very truth will act to uphold the righteous and sustain them in the midst of adversity, insomuch that the ignorance of the violent will be confounded. And the truth will heal and protect them, and nourish them with everlasting joy. And they shall have eternal tranquility in the presence of Anokeesed, and their souls will be bound together with the man. And it is the division of days which has come now to be established, that can complete the preparedness of the righteous to act, to divide the earth. And it is also the division of days among the wicked that will prepare them to anticipate that they are also able to venture forth to divide the earth, to cause their lives to act independently from the truth. And their desire is to cast off the yoke of the truth and the restraints of the created order in their relationships with one another, which brings them shame and guilt in their fornications and wickedness. And I beheld with that after the Lord had said these things, it was dark, and Enoch and Edney had fallen asleep upon the leaves of the ground. And in the morning when they awoke, their first thoughts were to wonder if it was a dream. But after conferring together, they immediately abandoned their journey to rest in the east, and they set out to return to Maween, and all of that which the Lord had spoken lay heavily upon their hearts. And as I looked with I saw that Enoch and Edney were now old, and while burdens of this magnitude were difficult to bear, both of them were strong and fearless in the face of it. And it came to pass that next night that they slept in the cavity of a rock, to be protected from beasts of the field. And the opening was very small, and they had to fit in feet first. And I saw that in the night Enoch awoke, and he arose, and he walked in the moonlight. And he repented, and he said, Lord, forgive me, because I fell asleep, perhaps before you had completed your instructions to us. And now I have important questions to ask you. Yesternight, you gave my rib and me an important task to do for you, and in behalf of the needs of our father Anokeesed, and I have not yet learned from you as to what element I must use to divide the earth, and also concerning the manner in which it must be done. And after Enoch had prayed in this way, the Spirit of the Lord drew close upon Enoch, and the Lord said, The sands of the earth feel the division of the earth, and all of the tiny stones of Abel in sand are separate from one another, and a line of division between the land and the seas of the earth is shown forth by sand, and the contrast between the behavior of the righteous and the wicked is manifested when they are drawn to the sands of this division. And sand also exposes those without the sanctity of marriage, for it encroaches upon their lands and countries to herald bitterness of fornications. And by contrast, sand expresses the nature of the value of the living water in the barrenness of the deserts of the earth. And after receiving this instruction, Enoch went back to sleep, and the two of them tarried in that place, so they could obtain provision for their journey back home. And they determined together that after they returned home, they would go to the land of Tawah, as neither of them had seen the sands of that place. And they wanted to behold for themselves the line of division in the sands of the earth and in the behavior of men. And it came to pass that when they returned home, they sought to sit among the council of Chavah, so that they could rehearse all that the Lord had said to them regarding the division of the earth. And the council met and listened intently to all that which was said. And after Enoch and Edney had spoken of their plan to visit the sands of division, Baraka tattled to the elders, and she said that they intended to go to the land of Tawah, and in her old age it was her intent that they not be allowed to go, for fear that something may befall them. Reference number 191. Remember, the people of Tawah threatened Enoch at his birth, and they took many of Baraka's children away from her. But the council was wise and gracious, and they made a way so that it could be accomplished in safety. And it was decided that a company of those who were dressed as traders would go with them. And it was decided that first the company would journey to the land of Elam to obtain dates and the fruit of trees, so that they could trade them in the land of Tawah, for trading was unknown in the land of Maween. And after all was prepared, the company of them set out to cross the sands of Tawah into the regions of Elam. And because of the wickedness there, the sands of the earth had expanded to become vast, to exceed a view from horizon to horizon. And this had occurred since Enoch went there to obtain the in his youth, and travel was very difficult for them, for they were unaccustomed to walking in sand. And it came to pass that after they had gathered their things to trade, they proceeded northward, and they entered in to come to the west branch of two rivers. And in this place there was the traffic of travelers that was coming and going, and the land there was green by the river, and the company of them rested in the shade there by a spring of water close to the river. And they could understand the speech of those who traveled there with some difficulty, and the travelers were heard to speak of one who was mighty and strong among them. And they reported that the people stood in fear of him and paid him homage. And none in the company of Enoch had ever heard of nor known any person like this before. And it came to pass that Edney inquired among the women in that place as to the name of this mighty man. And they said his name was Methuselah. And Edney, upon hearing this name, lost her strength, and she sat upon the ground. And after a while she spoke to Enoch, and she said, The mighty one that they speak of must surely be our son, Methuselah. Now the name Methuselah means, the man who will fulfill the covenant had a son. And the name Methuselah means, the man of the dart. But the Spirit of the Lord and the heart of a mother could know. And after a while, when all of the travelers were gone, and only an old man remained, and Enoch inquired of him and said, Can you direct us to know how to come to the dwelling place of the man Methuselah? And the man pointed the way northward, and he said it was several days' journey, and that Methuselah lived in a place where the river grew small, in a valley that was green with trees. And it came to pass that the company of travelers set out to the north to find Methuselah, and they were guided as they went by other travelers along the way. And as I looked with Urim, it seemed to me to be very unusual that a man such as Enoch, who had been taught by his father to know how to travel over the land, should need so many instructions. And I knew that the spirit of Enoch was being crowded in upon by the evil in the land of Toah, which thing was very troubling to him. And it came to pass that as they traveled, the river grew smaller, and the country became hilly. And when they came to the valley which they sought, they looked down from the brow of a hill. And they saw a village with walls, and they saw men with weapons, and never had such a sight come before their eyes. And being led by Essene, the company boldly proceeded into the encampment through the gate in the walls, and they took up their place where traders stay, who enter the city to trade their goods. And it came to pass that in the place of trading, Enoch hired a man with some of the goods that he brought, and it was a basket of dates. And he sent him in to inquire of Methuselah as to whether he had a mother and a father or not. And the man was obedient, and he went in, and he stood before Methuselah, and he carried in his hands the basket of dates that was his hire. And he said, Methuselah, O mighty one, I have been hired with this basket of dates in my hands by a trader, to ask you whether you have a mother and a father or not. And immediately the countenance of Methuselah showed forth his anger, and he arose to his feet, and he said, Show me the man who hired you. And he gathered his men with weapons, and he went forth in his anger to see the man. And the man with the dates brought him to Enoch. And Enoch and Essene were sitting by their goods upon the ground, over against the wall of the city. And Methuselah approached, and the man said, pointing to Enoch, This is the man who hired me. And Methuselah stepped forward, and he beheld the faces of his mother and his father, and he fell to his knees before them. But he immediately regained his composure as he arose. And Essene stepped forward with her arms outstretched to embrace him, but he forbid her sternly. And he said in a quiet voice, Mother, one of my station cannot be seen to be embraced by a woman. All of you must come to my house, away from this public place. And Methuselah turned without another word, nor did he look back, and he left. And those who came with him bid Enoch and all of their company to follow. And they all went to the house of Methuselah, and his house was grand, and it was made of wood and stone. And none in the company with Enoch had ever seen anything like it before. And it came to pass that after they arrived and went into the house of Methuselah, they were left alone for a while. And then Methuselah entered to come in, and he was followed by his twin wives. And they walked very saucily and with many subtleties. And none in the company had ever beheld such women before. And the first was named Edna, for she greatly desired a life of pleasure. And the second was named Zana, because she followed after her lust. And none of them durst ask what had become of Iona. And the company of traders was much looked down upon for their commonness. And when all was prepared, Methuselah bid all of them to sit down to a meal, and a platter of meat was brought forth, and a loaf of bread. And because of the customs in Maween, Essene brought out dates and fruit to add to the meal, which thing was an abhorrence to the wives of Methuselah. But in this way Edney boldly asserted her motherhood over Methuselah. And it came to pass that Methuselah took a knife out from under his garment over his heart. And it was a knife after the manner of Seku, and he plunged it into the meat. And all of those in the house of Methuselah knew that to eat the meat of the knife was to show their allegiance to a master of the society of Seku. And it was the view of all in that land that it was wholly unwise not to partake of the meat of the knife in the presence of one of their masters. And it came to pass that after Methuselah mumbled some words, he invited them to eat, and he cut the bread. And all of the company of traders withheld their hands to eat the fruit of the house of Methuselah. And they ate only the dates and the fruit of Edney. And all at the meal spoke together for a while, and there was much boisterousness by those of the house of Methuselah. And Edney, for the first time, beheld rudeness before the Holy One in heaven. And after a while Methuselah asked them where they were going. And Enoch discerned, by the power of the Spirit that was in him, that he must answer to say, that they now were preparing to depart to their homeland. And I knew in my heart that if Enoch had said anything else, the company of them would have been cast into prison. And Enoch continued, and he said, We came to view this land of yours, and now we are well satisfied to know of this place, for we are preparing to depart to our homeland. And after pondering these things, Methuselah asked his wives and servants to leave, and then he said, I have a request to ask of you as you depart. And Enoch said, Say on. And Methuselah said, As you travel, tell no man that you are my father. And all of the company arose and left, and as Edney departed through the doorway of the house of her firstborn son, she bent down, and she caught up a handful of sand, and she laid it over the threshold of the door inside the house. And she turned to her husband and said, We have heard the voice of the sands of the earth this day. Now let us depart to do the bidding of the Lord. Reference number 192. Could this be the origin of shaking dust off your feet when leaving the places of the wicked? And it came to pass that the company departed eastward from there, and the Lord warned Enoch in a dream to tell him to turn towards the north, and travel to the mountains there, for there were those whose intent it was to pursue them. And in the morning they turned their faces toward the north, and the winds of the earth blew upon the sands, and the signs upon the earth of their course were no more. And after they went north, they turned and they traveled east, and it was directly west of the Aral Sea. And it came to pass on the way, with all of these things fresh on his heart, Enoch inquired of the Lord to find further instruction regarding how he was to divide the earth. And the Lord said, This is the manner in which you shall divide the earth. The earth shall have 4 quarters, and you shall see to it that these quarters are distinct. And your intent shall be that they each shall present themselves before the hearts and eyes of every soul, who shall find breath among the children of men. For as long as the earth shall stand, and you shall not allow the wicked to discover the righteous division of the earth which you shall accomplish. And you shall establish the meaning and function of each of the quarters of the earth, and you shall be discreet concerning how the righteous souls of men are to be joined to those among the watchers of holiness, who shall preside to prevail in each quarter of the earth. And you shall put in place those among the Urkodashoi, who shall prevail in each of the 4 ways. And you shall determine who among the Urkodashoi shall stand in each of the 4 quarters of the earth, so that they may maintain strength of spirit for the righteous, to give them the upper hand. And this must be carefully taught and established by those men of service who are known to walk with my Father. And the knowledge of how they shall instruct the people concerning the division of earth is after this manner. The direction of the rising sun shall be your starting place, and it is the place of my abode. And you shall proceed in all of your worship in the way the sun passes around the heavens each day. And there shall be languages and feelings, and the power of loving kindness that shall emanate from the 4 quarters of the earth. And the feelings of that which you establish shall come into the heart of every man upon the earth, whenever they cast their eyes to look this way or that way. And the intention of my Father for the division of the earth is for it to endure in all the generations of man, and little children shall feel it, no matter whether their parents are good or evil. And the wicked will be at pains to educate their children to block out the righteousness of the holy voices of the four quarters of the earth. And the dark-hearted Archoi will go to great extents to aid the wicked to become removed from the effects of these voices. And there shall be many among the Erkodashoi who will act in each of the four quarters of the earth. But there shall be 6 principal conditions among them that are adept to bring the direct presence of the loving kindness of my Father into the souls of men. And the knowledge of these things is to be utilized fully by the righteous and yet tempered with discretion. And you shall not withhold the knowledge of it from the righteous, but they each must use discretion. And the men of Abarah shall determine and set in motion all of these conditions among the Erkodashoi in every age and land upon the earth. And the power of the four quarters of the earth shall preside to come into the souls of the righteous with the feelings of my Father. And it shall come into their eyes, and into their hearing, and into the depths of their souls, and into their knowing. And it shall direct and sustain all of their moments of pondering. And the quarter of the earth within which the sun rises shall be the direction of reproval, but not my reproval, rather of the innocent, tender approval of my Father. And I dwell in the first quarter of the earth, because my soul is drawn to his reproval. And from this quarter of the earth shall emanate marvelous voices, with feelings that call one to be aware of their need to really know how they and Anokeesed are doing together, as a father and his children walking in the way. And the conditions among the Erkodashoi who shall preside to prevail in the first quarter of the earth shall be associated with fire and water. And the protection clan, with all who are inscribed therein, are to be joined to this quarter. And I was instructed by what these following conditions are for the holy city of the last day, here in the land of promise. And the 6 conditions among the Erkodashoi who are to preside to prevail in the east are the first snowflakes of winter, and volcanoes old and new, and the sounds of mighty lustrial waters, and the light of lightning that lightens up your way in the darkness, and the presence of the warmth of cooking fires, and that which can be felt from beholding rivulets of water. And these 6 things shall be empowered to bring strong feelings of the nature of the reproval of my Father into the lives of men. And when one turns themselves toward the glory side, the next quarter of the earth shall be the direction of living life, and not the living of life that is influenced by the ways of fear and wickedness, but rather that which is lived in the arms of my Father. And this is why the righteous of every age, in order to live life fully, must draw away and be separate from the wicked, in order to maintain the divisions of the earth, and thus endure to hold the upper hand. And from this quarter will emanate voices with feelings that call one to live life charitably, and to be happily attached to the circumstances of their lives, like a household with a father and a mother and their busy children. And the 6 conditions among the Erkodashoi, which shall preside to prevail in this quarter of the south, are associated with the earth. And the service clan and all who are inscribed therein are to be joined to this quarter. And the 6 conditions among the Erkodashoi of the south are the picking of all fruits, whether they be on the ground or in the bush, upon the vine or in the tree, and when there is any contact with a seed, whether to touch it or to see it waving in the wind, or to taste it in a meal, and the smell of the oceans or the seas of water, and the rocks of birthplaces, and the steps of flocks and herds, or loved ones among Shemael, and patches on clothing. And these 6 things shall be given power to send strong feelings of the nature of living life that emanates from the heart of my Father. And when one turns themselves toward the glory side once again, they may approach to face the quarter of the earth, that is the direction of forgiveness, not my forgiveness, but the forgiveness of my Father, who is the innocent and tender one, who cannot anticipate evil. And from this quarter of the earth shall emanate marvelous voices of the joys of rich forgiveness, that can only find their fullness in the presence and nature of my Father. And the conditions among the Urkodashoi, who shall preside to prevail in this quarter of the west, shall be associated with the wind, and the virtue clan, with all who are inscribed therein, are to be joined to this quarter of the earth in their souls. And the 6 conditions among the Urkodashoi, who are stationed there in the west, to preside and prevail are quietly rising smoke, and tornadoes and whirlwinds passing close by, and the rays of sunlight casting their beams through clouds, and cool winds and breezes, and the sounds of birds flying, and their breath and song, and the sight of falling leaves. And these conditions among the Urkodashoi are set in their places to bring a sense of the power of forgiveness, and it is a forgiveness that is not preceded by any process of remorse, and it can only come after the children of men have firmly laid hold of the repentance spoken of by Motsah the Lamb. And you will see, when he presents you to his Father, free and clean from sin by the labors of your repentance, that the forgiveness of Anokeesed is complete and without condition, because of the merits of the lovely one, who became temporal to follow out with us into the struggles and trials of our lives. And when one turns themselves yet again to complete the cycle, you shall come face to face with the direction of hope, not the hope of the oppressed or the vengeful, but the hope of my Father in his unconditional and undivided love. And from this quarter of the earth shall emanate strong voices with feelings to trust and believe. For no matter what the circumstances, the loving kindness of my Father will in the end come to you and give you peace and comfort. But not the peace and comfort of pleasure and ease, but the peace that can only come when all wickedness and corruption is done away in your lives. And the conditions among the Urkodashoi, which shall preside to prevail in this last quarter of the earth, are associated with the sky, and all of the clans of the men and all their several hosts are to be joined with this quarter. And the 6 conditions among the Urkodashoi, who are to preside to prevail in this quarter of the north, are mist in low places, and passing clouds that are moving in 2 ways, and rainbows against the light, and the moon between the clouds, and the stars of evening that are mixed with the lights of fireflies, and the arrival of the first signs of the 4 seasons. And all of these 24 conditions among the Urkodashoi shall preside over their fellows to speak, and to herald, and to magnify, and to utilize the feelings of the hopes of my Father, and they shall continuously witness of him to every soul upon the earth, according to the various designations of the men of service. And it is a sad report that there will be many who will become dull of hearing and hard in their feelings, and void to comprehend all of these things, and they will find that they will be left without a knowledge of their Father. And it will come to pass in the days of wickedness and vengeance, that all of the world of the wicked will labor to cast off the righteous division of the earth, and Motsah the decadent will glory in his domain. And there will be numberless multitudes who will succeed in turning away from all of these voices and these feelings of their Father. And in the end of days, the division of the earth must be reestablished, and the visions and grandeur of these prevailing conditions among the Urkodashoi will once again gain the upper hand among men. And I say again, that you shall both together as a man and wife establish this division of the earth to protect the righteous who love my Father. And you shall surely set it in place for this people. For this division of the earth shall be the only framework in which the truth will be enabled to be independent to act for itself. in the midst of creation, and by this division, you are placing the righteous acts of the perceptions of Yaatsekawd and Chavah in the completeness of it, in their several stations, which encompass all of time, and it will gain the upper hand. And the Darkar Choi and their ilk must be in this way obliged to follow the lead of those whom my Father sees to be the objects of creation, and because of this, they will be forever dependent upon the righteousness that springs forth from the feelings of my Father. And they must start with the truth, and then distort, corrupt, and otherwise react in all of their despicable ways to that wonderful, lovely truth. Therefore, they cannot originate or create or invent anything, but they must start with the truth and then rebel, thus condemning themselves and all they feel and do to be short-lived and temporary, and of no part of the absolute eternity of Elda. And because of this, it is the truth that will protect the righteous, so that evil will not be able to overcome the communities of the righteous. And because there will be different levels of intensity in the opposition that will be sent upon the righteous from the wicked, there are 4 levels of urgency that will protect the people of Anokeesed during the tribulation times. Reference number 193. Righteous people in community together never protect themselves from each other. The wicked are those outside their circle of acquaintance together in the Lord. And this is the first level of urgency, when the loved ones of the righteous turn aside from walking with them, and they form accusations against them, and because they are bonded together, the spirit of the accusations causes the spirit of Satan to draw close. And the righteous people will feel dreadful feelings, and they will feel unclean. Reference number 194. See chapter 15, verse 4 through 6. And struggle to feel close to the Lord. And while this first level of urgency is simple, it is very important to firmly put it in place, because the accusations will come in the form to oppose some specific aspect of the truth that the Spirit has led you to accomplish. And the opposition will be directly in relation to that truth for the purpose of discouraging the righteous from fulfilling the leadings of the Lord, and it will come to them easily from the feelings of their loved one, because they have a bond together. Reference number 195. See 2 Kahee, chapter 1, verse 90 through 97. And because of this, these accusations will be effective. And when this happens, the righteous must go before the Lord and offer up prayers of love and compassion, and request that the Lord forgive them. And they must pray that their sin may not continue, only to embarrass them at the last day. And this act of love and compassion will turn the opposition of accusations away, and your feelings of cleanness will return, and your walk with the Lord will be restored in your heart. And the acts of Satan to cause you to dwell upon the accusations will be done away, and you will find the power of this love to be effective. And the second level of urgency that will safeguard the righteous comes when the feelings of opposition go beyond accusations and become severe feelings that are hard to shake off, and your prayers of forgiveness only work for a little while, or perhaps not at all. And when this condition is present, it is likely that some element of wickedness is being used in the worship of darkness by those who are purposefully sending hateful feelings and prayers against the righteous, and the urgency becomes more serious, because now the potential for injury, misfortune, or mishap comes into play, and the powers of darkness are seriously against the righteous, and the righteous are singled out and spiritually attacked, and the feelings of hatred against a truth is being magnified with the elements of wickedness, and it will be a specific truth, and they are sending prayers against the righteous in order to cause them to fail, and the fear of failure will become very real in the hearts of the righteous. And when this happens, it will mean that the sons of darkness will have identified some specific truth that they are denying, being pointed toward the righteous, and this truth must be identified, and the condition charged with safeguarding that truth. Reference number 196. Appendix Discourse on the 24 Conditions should be approached, and expressions of comfort and sorrow brought to the Erkodashoy who are associated with that condition. And you must call the condition by name, and you must inform those Erkodashoy that they have already asked the Lord to forgive someone perpetrating this offense. And if you know who they are, tell the condition and the Erkodashoy who it is, without any ill feelings, because remember, you could have previously forgiven them and asked the Lord to bless them, and this will dissolve the effects of their prayers and turn them away. And there is a third level of urgency, and this level of urgency is more of a long duration and a very serious one that requires a community effort, and the instructions must be diligently followed, and it comes into being when the elements of wickedness are used against you with the added evil of explicit denial of a specific truth that was previously affirmed by them, but now is denied in relation to the righteous. And this third level will now require the use of the element of righteousness to magnify your prayers, and the response of the Erkodashoy, and it will require a close relationship with the Lord and the spirits of life and creation, and with one another in community. And the evil forces sent against you will be in the form to rejoice in your trials and be jealous of your successes. And those forces will have the intent to cause you to fail in your service to the Lord. And at this level, they can cause serious bodily harm and more. And in this level, your expressions of virtue and holiness of heart must be broadened. And this is the ceremony that you shall do in the beginning of this threat, with more to follow if it continues unabated. And men of service must go before the Erkodashoy, who are associated with the condition, and they must pour their hearts out to them, informing them of all they have done to address the forces coming against them. And they must ask the Erkodashoy for assistance and their help in overcoming the forces of darkness. And they must pray to Anokeesed as their father to instruct the Erkodashoy in how they should respond. And you give the condition some Rishoni element. Reference number 197. See appendix for explanation of which element to use. By sprinkling it out before them, and you can expect that the Erkodashoy will have no feelings of hatred, but will respond with determination according to the instructions they receive from Anokeesed. And when you do this, there shall be an immediate feeling of relief. And remember not to define or ask for any explicit response from the Erkodashoy, and trust the Lord to instruct them. But if the relief is only temporary, then in this third level, care must be put in place to see that this level is ongoing. And your holy people and community must unite together and make preparations to reaffirm some of the divisions of the earth, and this will have the effect to set these protections in place for longer durations, perhaps even for the remainder of the times of tribulations. And the divisions of the earth that are to be reaffirmed are the instructions, reference number 198, chapter 15, verse 73 through 75, given to the four mothers who designate the dwelling places for all the Erkodashoy and the Darkar-Darchoy. And these instructions must be followed carefully by four mothers, not turning aside from them in any manner. And for the men of service, reference number 199, chapter 15, verse 77 through 80, they must make declarations to reaffirm the nature and character of the voices that emanate from the four directions that have been established since before the flood. Reference number 200. Instructions are found in chapter 14, verse 129 through 132, east. Chapter 14, verse 133 through 137, south. Chapter 14, verse 138 through 143, west. And chapter 14, verse 144 through 148, north. And you shall study to get the sense of the instruction being led by the Spirit, so that you can make these declarations when the need first arises. And you shall make these declarations from time to time to establish the division of the earth for a specific need for protection and well-being. And if the need persists, you shall make these declarations year by year on the first day of the season of fall, on the very day starting at sunrise. And in this way, these protections will be set in place for the coming year. And if the opposition changes form in the coming times, you shall go to any additional conditions needed and add the truth they hold to your request for assistance. And there is the fourth level of urgency. And this level is meant to address a major crisis with the need for protection. And it requires the leadership of a man of Abarah and his wife. And it takes a high level of discipline and diligence to put it into effect. And this level of urgency is for the purpose of dissipating a monetary but severe crisis. And it may happen that the wicked can find the means using great deceits to overcome the Yaatsekawad after assistance has been called for. And for this reason, it is important for the people to be extremely diligent to see to it that the Yaatsekawad are only instructed by those who know how among the married men of Abarah. And the righteous people who stand in the pathway of Perel must be diligent to see that none among them are thinking to instruct the Yaatsekawad who prevail, who are not designated to do so. For such may bring confusion to the Yaatsekawad, and it may delay the comfort and protection that is coming to the righteous, or it may weaken it. And as I have said, when the Yaatsekawad are overcome, you must heighten your urgency this fourth time, and only those who are capable of having no fear in the face of it must lead, and instruct, and guide, and show by example how to act. For in this extreme case, all of the righteous must respond to the Yaatsekawad being overcome by grieving with them for the disrespect for the truth that is being shown, and for the poor heart of my father, who must undergo the distress of his loved ones. And your mourning with him must be expressed as a true child would mourn with their father, and compassion for him must overflow to reach into Elda. And when you do these things, just as I have instructed you, in the utter purity of your love for Anokeesed, there is no act of the use of the element of wickedness that can be accomplished by evil that can overcome you. And I say to you that those who cannot accomplish the absence of fear must trust and depend upon those who can make this vital bonding in love with Anokeesed. And in this way, my Father will take care of his loved ones. So remember, there are 4 levels of urgency for the protection of the righteous, in the face of evil finding dominance in the world or having ill effects directly in the lives of the righteous. The first level of urgency is to establish among the righteous a willingness to forgive the offenders, whoever they are, and to ask Anokeesed to forgive them, and he will do so. This will cause or maintain that evil will always be subject to good, and that it will not find the means to instigate any force that it uses for evil that can overcome forgiveness. And the second level of urgency is for the righteous to make declarations of mourning with the conditions for the truth that they hold that has been denied. And these declarations shall be sent forth to address specific groups or individuals among the wicked who attempt or do in fact come in against the righteous with the effects of their wickedness. And this second level will cause the wicked, who are evil for evil's sake, to have no effect upon the righteous, for they must show and express dependency upon truth and righteousness, and then deny it, for they are evil to work against my people. The third level of agency comes when the wicked indeed do acknowledge righteousness and the truth in specific ways, and then deny it in their evil ways. To use the element of wickedness when this occurs, the Yaatsekawad who preside to prevail must be called upon for assistance, and their assistance must be obtained by men of service only, and the assistance asked for is for the purpose of strengthening and reaffirming the truth among the righteous that is being denied. And the fourth level of urgency occurs when the Yaatsekawad, after having assisted the righteous, are overcome by the deceits of the wicked. Then the people of Anokeesed must mourn with them for his sake, in order to be protected and preserved. And only a married man of the order of Abba and his rib may be called upon to lead during this crisis. And remember, your mourning cannot be for yourselves, but rather for the tender heart of Anokeesed, and for the conditions who preside to prevail in their burden in the face of the disrespect of evil that comes against the desires of the heart of Anokeesed. And in the power of this mourning, the spirit of forgiveness will grow to burst the bonds of it, and there is no force in creation that can stand against it to prevail, to suppress the tender heart of the people of Anokeesed in their desires to safeguard their father and his people. And while the first and second levels of urgency can be used independently from time to time, according to the need, the fourth level of urgency must always be preceded by the third, and only the third level of urgency uses the declarations of the divisions of the earth in the two ways that have been said. And the heart of Enoch was moved, that he could know how to safeguard his people from evil. Now it came to pass, after I beheld all of these things with that I still could not understand how dividing the earth could assure that the truth of Anokeesed could be made to be independent, to act for itself by the division of the earth. And I inquired of the Lord, and I called the scribes together once again. And I looked again, and I saw Motsah the Lamb sitting with Enoch and Ednei. And the vision came up before the three of them, and I beheld it with them. And I am hearing instructions, but I cannot tell if it is the Lord or the Spirit speaking. And I see Yaatsekawd and Chavah in the garden, defining and interpreting creation, and they are expressing their dominion before they were come together in their marriages. And I can behold them as they look out with their eyes at creation, and they stand, the both of them, as the first living human souls in the midst of creation. And into their minds and souls comes a view of creation, and all of the watchers of heaven are startled to feel the view that comes with the presence of these two souls, who are in the image of Anokeesed, and they become very intent upon that which is occurring among them. And for the first time, the decrees of creation that were heralded in Elda are now being heralded in the midst of creation by the comprehensions of these two living souls. And the sound of the heralding has brought all creation to reverence. And all of the forms element has taken among the Yaatsekawad were greatly moved in the face of it. And all of the souls of the living knew that our first parents, who are now standing before them with their view of creation, had brought the decrees of creation to a full expression, and everything was attentive, and they all listened carefully. For these two, who are in the image of Anokeesed, in their innocence and purity, and in their condition of humanness, are the first objects of creation to look out with their eyes, and that which they beheld, and the meaning of it to them, and the feelings that filled their hearts, because of that which they saw, was the very first expression of the truth in creation. And that truth exclusively was in the bonds to encompass the loving kindness of Anokeesed, and it was by their choice. And I beheld for myself that they were able to readily draw near to the presence of Anokeesed, because they felt and perceived him to be a man in the midst of the elements of creation. And it was their chosen preference to conceive of him as a man, and they did not know consciously of it until the day arrived when they came to comprehend the joys of their forgiveness at the altar of Ariel. But from the beginning, when they first beheld in their souls the four spirits of life, they felt and sought out what was to be later known to them as the man, whose soul abides to live and move and give life to all the elements of creation. And he is one and the same as Motsah the Lamb, the very son of Anokeesed. And that view of creation, as reflected through the feelings and presence of the man, satisfied all of the purposes of Anokeesed, when in his heart he intended to create all that exists. And this truth was in this way established by Anokeesed and his son and man, before the arrival of evil into the world. And this was according to the decrees of creation that were proclaimed in Elda in the beginning, which say, the first decree of creation is that I can be a father to man in creation, by the power of the intervention of the agency of my Son, who is in the flesh, as are all men. The second decree of creation is that all the doings of creation and all the affairs of man's salvation must be done by man, through the power of the intervention of their agency. But the wicked will claim that their view of creation, which came through the eyes of an aimless piece of debris that broke off of a comet, was the first expression of the truth. And the wicked will set their hand to establish their own decrees all through the course of the earth, and the strength of their lies will weigh heavily upon the earth at the end of days. And in the days of Enoch, the wicked were come to assert themselves to independence away from the truth. And I saw that by dividing the dwelling places of the sons of heaven upon the earth, the truth can gain the upper hand. And the Erkodashoi are stationed in the four quarters of the earth with explicit instructions to speak clearly and resolutely all of the feelings of Anokeesed to man in the exact tenure of the instructions of the men of Abarah. And the four directions constitute the whole, and the Darkardar are stationed in a place other than the four directions, by the declarations of the four mothers, and it is in a place to prohibit their speech, and the whole is consumed in this way, leaving no resources for evil coming from the directions, and no place for them to stand except for the intervention of the agency of the wicked. And the wicked will bring forth the Darkardar out of the darkness and give them place, and direct them to speak the views of Motsah the decadent, and his lying views of creation. And when the wicked begin to assert themselves in this way, the divisions of the earth must be reaffirmed to expose his lies, and lies must flee in the face of the power of the truth. And the Erkodashoi can be relied upon to speak as they are instructed in behalf of Anokeesed. And the wicked shall come to sore distress, because their lies are made bare before the eyes of all the people. And it is known in heaven that the truth of whichever view of creation is upheld by decrees of creation, whether it be good or evil, will be independent by the nature of those decrees. So the battle is, who can establish their decrees of creation in the temporal world first, and with the clearest intelligence. Will it be decrees heralded by Enoch that were first expressed in Elda, or those arising from the rebellion of the sons of comets in their many wanderings? And we know that Enoch divided the earth once and for all, and now in the end of days, just before the tribulations began, his very division has been reaffirmed in the entirety of those instructions of the Lord to Enoch, and they need to be reaffirmed again, except that which has been instructed in the third level of agency. And in the end of days it must needs be accomplished again in the war of that time. And the decrees of creation heralded in Elda are known to be one of the doings of creation that made Anokeesed well pleased. And thus I came to understand the division of the earth, and how it can establish the truth of Anokeesed to be independent and act for itself. And it came to pass that after these instructions, the company of traders traveled eastward until they arrived in the borders of Maween, at the altar of Asuf. And the watchmen of Maween greeted them and caused them to rest from their journeys across the sands of the wicked. This concludes the Book of Remembrance of Enoch, chapter 14. Shalom.